Padres Hot Tub is brought to you by our Padres Hot Tub Patreon community, a group of people who have decided to help support financially this show, this crew, and get all sorts of great benefits for doing so. They do that by going to patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. And Chris, right now, of course, beginning of February, that means it's fantasy baseball season. It's time to find your league. It's time to get locked in, try to figure out that spot. And who does fantasy bigger or better than the Padres Hot Tub Discord community? It's insane.
Dude, I've seen nothing like it in my life. Just this past week, we have been dealing with our Dynasty League, which is 20 teams, 20 people. We'll be holding on to players forever. It's longer commitments than I have in just about every relationship in my life, and I can't wait. Our just year-to-year redraft ladder league is up to 6 or 7 teams. And if we are
leagues, you mean, not teams, leagues.
Leagues, I'm sorry. Yes, leagues, like 100 teams near about.
Yeah.
So, like, if you want to get in on this, we're going to be drafting very soon. And the only place to get in is on our Discord. And you access our Discord, you got to sign up for our Patreon.
Plus, Raphie, all sorts of bonus programming that's patron only.
Yeah. So Fangraphs released their 2025 Zips projections from Dan Zimborski for the Padres just a few days ago. And patrons exclusively got a 40 or something minute video of me just going through them all, just going through the projections, giving my takes, giving some context, talking about the Padres in reference to our biggest NL West rival. No, not the one you're thinking of. The actual one who we're going to be competing with, the Diamondbacks. And yeah, it was just something that I think I'm actually going to do more frequently, in terms of just kind of going through some of the more finer stat points. And those are all going to be exclusive for our patrons. So come and hang out with us.
It's just really a plus EV situation. You get so much more benefit back than you do cost on the way out. So check it out. It starts at just $5, goes up to higher levels with even better benefits, but you can see it all for yourself. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. Welcome to the Padres Hot Tub, everybody. Monday, February 3rd, 2025, the longest January in existence, finally passed us. It only lasted 71 days. Congratulations. Craig Helston, Chris Reed, Raphie Cantor, and look who's back joining us once again, the guru of the roster resource from Fangraphs.com. Jason RR Martinez is joining us here. Jason, welcome back. It's so great to have you.
Thank you very much. I've been saving up some hot takes for you guys. So whenever you're ready, I'm ready to go with these.
Okay. Now it's just like a box of excitement. Who knows what's yet to come?
I don't even know. I just know that I haven't been talking with anybody about Padres. It's been really quiet. So if you ask me about it, I don't know what's coming out, but something.
Been sitting there dying to talk Terso, have you?
Oh yeah.
Hey,
definitely.
You never know. Is Terso our next profile? A topic we probably won't explore on today's show. However, there are several things that we definitely want to get to with you. And first off, I know, boys, you wanted to chat a little bit through FanFest, right? The official kickoff to Padres season 2025. Once you open the gates at Petco Park, the diamond of the Gaslamp Quarter, then you know that it is baseball season indeed.
Well, Raphie and I were only getting the assorted feeds from social medias and stuff. I want to know what it was like, boots on the ground in the shit, Craig. What was it like?
I did not see any shit. So we're happy to report no shit, at least in the areas I was walking. You can't speak for outside, but Petco Park immaculately clean. Please don't even go there. No, I'll tell you this: 2023 FanFest was ludicrously large. You might remember fire marshals shut her down pretty much for overcrowding. And I don't think they had to shut down for overcrowding on Saturday. It wasn't a bad crowd. It was a nice crowd, but you could at least move on the concourse, and you couldn't do that a couple of years ago. So in the most general sense of attendance, it wasn't quite as attended as others, but I'd say for the patrons who attended, more comfortably so. That you actually had the ability to move around and probably do the things. The field is clearly to be resodded down the road. It still kind of looks like it did for the Callaway Lynx. I mean, it's a mess. And people were running around
the rodeo
on it.
there, right?
Yeah, they had the rodeo. I mean, it's bad, but I mean, they're obviously going to resod it. So they probably are just kind of waiting for this event or something to go through, and then they'll actually get the field back up to big league snuff. So, and it was fine. It was FanFest. The players did some interview lines, autograph lines, I should say. They had the stage. Bogarts is staying at shortstop. Morahone's staying in the bullpen. Hoeing is staying in the bullpen. We got that much news. Crony, who may not be in the best shape of his life. That our famous spring training.
He just got married. Let him work off those hors d'oeuvres.
This is the same thing. Like the Soto picture came out and everyone was losing their minds. But there was a video from like literally 2 days before when Soto was in the hot tub when he found out he was getting his $750 million contract and he looked jacked. So
wasn't in this hot tub, unfortunately. But.
Unfortunately, not in this one. I don't think even when he was on the Padres, he would have wanted to go into this hot tub. That was part of the problem. But I just think it's lighting and these guys aren't wrestlers needing to make weight every time. It's fine. It'll be okay. And then we'll get a best shape of his life narrative in 3 weeks. It'll be awesome.
I think you'll get it for someone else, like Manny or Toddy. But Jason, my number one takeaway, getting back around this, is just the reminder that Major League Baseball players do not think in the way of online chatterati, and commentators and podcasters and writers and analysts. They like their team. They love the studs on this team, and they miss the couple of guys that they're missing, but they feel like with the studs they have, they're still better than most of the teams in baseball. And I think it's so easy for us to lose that for the trees, so to speak, as the winter goes forward.
Yeah, I have to remind myself often throughout the year for different reasons. Like, these dudes are some of the greatest baseball players on the planet, and they've known that for a long time. And you don't get to where you are, like, unless you're the kind of guy that's like, nah, we're good. That guy left. Okay, good for him. I'm not going to be sad about it. We're still good. We're going to compete. My elbow ligament snap, it's good. I'm going to be back next month. Cool. Tommy John surgery takes 12 to 18 months. I feel good. I'm going to be back in about 9 months. It's not, and you go, I get it, man. I get it because I kind of have the same mentality, and I just played baseball in high school, man, and I was an average player, and my mentality was like that. Like, I'm not coming off the field ever. Basketball game. Don't take me out of the game, coach. I don't care if we're losing by 40 points. It's not over. I'm not coming out. And so I go, look at me at my level. These guys are, right here. I kind of get it. You know what I mean? So I always try to remind myself of that whenever these guys say anything. They're on a different planet than us here as being one of the greatest baseball players alive at this time.
Yeah, I'll give you one other quick example and we'll move on, which is we had the chance on the radio show, because we had to do a Saturday show there, to chat with Trevor. And I mean, anytime you chat with Trevor Hoffman, it's an amazing thing, right? And so I knew we only had a few minutes, and so I only had like 3 maybe questions I could ask him in the course of that interview. And one I wanted to ask him was, who's got the best changeup in baseball today? Because you had the best changeup. So you've got to be a changeup connoisseur, right? When you've had the best changeup. So who's got the best changeup? And he only answered Padres. He's like, well, I really like Robert Suarez's changeup. And I think Morejon's changeup is getting so much better. And I think we've got, Hoeing can throw a changeup and this and that changeup. But he only said Padres in his answer. And then he finished it with, so I don't know who's got the best changeup in baseball, but I really like Suarez. And I'm like, on one level, you'd go, come on, man. I'm sure you could have said Tommy Kahnle or whoever,
Devin
right?
Williams. Yeah.
Yeah, or Airbender. You could have said that. But that's not the Band of Brothers way. They're about to go to spring training where he's going to talk to those guys. They all need to feel like they're the best relievers in baseball. And part of that is a mentality that you don't sit there and look like a golfer would at the field and go, oh, well, I think Justin Thomas has the best approach. And I think, DeChambeau's got the best drive and this and this and that. No, I'm the best. This is, and I'm going to be, if I'm not the best, I'm going to be the best. And it's just, I think that you could look at it and go, oh, come on, answer the question. I look at it as really revelatory. Like, this is how you have to think when you're going into a spring training. You're about to advise these guys. You're about to confide in these guys. You have to think they are the best.
Well, I wonder then, Craig, did Manny's comments strike you as surprising at all, that he had some candor in terms of saying, look, I am disappointed by how inactive this offseason is. And, he's also, he was open about the ownership stuff, Chris.
I thought he sounded a lot like us, Raphie, when he expressed disappointment with the adding to the team. And then also put out his opinion that he thought Roki Sasaki had his mind made up the whole time. I thought that was an interesting kind of like, Manny agrees with us. He sees what's going on. Manny knows.
You want to see that chip. You want to see that. He wants that chip on his shoulder. Baseball players, they want to have that chip. It doesn't matter how. Like, look at what Dave Roberts was doing last year, and you kind of laugh. You kind of laugh, and you go, "Are you kidding me, dude? Seriously?" And you're just like, "Look at his roster. How is he going to motivate these guys?" When they're like, "Oh, everybody's against us. The world against
the sinister sling." There it is.
There you go.
And
that happens, and he goes, "Oh hell yeah! Here you go. Here's the chip on our shoulder, guys." And it's it's like that with you hear these guys talking like nobody gave us a chance, and you're like, "What? You were like the favorite team in all season for whatever." It's just things like that happen all the time, and you just realize that. I don't know. The more you listen, if you listen closely to what these guys are saying when they talk about a baseball season, especially, they always mention that 162 game grind. It's a mental grind, and it's like they don't have a good way of explaining what that is and how it affects them. Really, it's really something that can't be explained. And you go, man, that just makes a lot of sense. That they keep bringing it up, but it's not really that easy to explain. It's just a really hard thing to deal with. The physical injuries as well happen, but it's mentally just getting in there and being able to grind every day. It's hard. That's why these guys are so up and down all season. So it's like, oh, that guy said, what about us? The Padres put a picture of Clayton Kershaw crying. Oh man, let's put that on the bulletin board. And it's like it does kind of work. And you think about it and you go, they don't need that. They don't need that motivation, right? They're professional baseball players, and I kind of think they do, because they're all like at this level, and they're all trying to like, how do we get beyond this? And it's like, oh, nobody believes in us. And so I always, whenever I hear somebody talk about that, I go, okay, do they have a good explanation? No, they just know that it's really hard.
Yeah, I also tend to think. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's like Michael Jordan and Tom Brady. Like, they're not petty guys at all. Those guys don't nitpick or put things on their shoulders, and they're the two best of all time. It's an attitude choice for sure.
It is, and I think in baseball more than any, because it's so hard, because it's so damn difficult on both sides to pitch and get someone out or to get a base hit ever, that it lends itself to a little bit more mysticism, a little bit more magical thinking, and just because, as you said, Jason, the mental grind is so difficult that there are very few people who can keep an even keel all the way through that, just being a game bot, and going, this is the game, this is the process, my process is good, this is okay. Like, there's not too many people that can do that. A lot of people need to have their controversy of the week or their whatever of the week to just get them week to week.
My first Petco Park mention, especially at Petco Park, because that was my point last year, and what I've kind of come to, like, it's already hard, and now you got to play at this place where for 3-4 months out of the season, a guy like Manny Machado or Tatis, who can hit the ball out of any direction of the park, they crush the ball to right center, and it's like, oh, you got caught. Okay, I better try to pull the ball now, right? And so they're rolling over and hitting ground balls at third for the first 2 months of the season, and you go, what are you doing out there? You go, did you see what happened when he crushed the ball to right field? It didn't go out. He didn't get rewarded for that. And so you really start to think, like, okay, I know Petco Park's, it's a different beast. You talk about the Mariners right now. You see what's going on with them, and they're trying to figure it out. It's kind of this very, very similar thing. It's like, it's hard to hit here, and it affects our whole team mentally, which is what makes Jackson Merrill so, like, I can't believe how consistent he was. Like, nobody told that kid it's not supposed to be this easy. He was just the whole season just like that, and I hope he can keep it up, and not, like, it doesn't seem like he's going to be the kind of guy who's gets kind of full of himself and say, I'm a home run hitter, I got to hit home runs. And if he has a start like he did last year, which is just, he's hanging in there, right? The first 2 months of the season, he's holding his own. It's fine. He's not anything special right now. Hopefully he'll figure it out. But he's just kind of, at bats were very good. And then all of a sudden he figured it out, and he was like a superstar for 3-4 months of the year. And you go, nobody on this team has ever looked like that. Adrian Gonzalez, if you want to talk about Petco years, there's Adrian Gonzalez was probably the closest we had to that guy who was just even kill, and it didn't matter. So,
bring up the Adrian Gonzalez years, huh?
Oh man, those were fun. There were some good teams there.
I did listen to Heath Bell talk about the fall of House Moores. And the Moores dynasty of Padres baseball. And Jason, like, has it been kind of worrying seeing all the drama as a Padres fan? Are the memories kicking in, the old trauma?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I remember they were talking about selling the team back in the 80s too. I mean, I think there was, were they going to move to DC or something at that point?
That was late 70s.
Late 70s.
1974, let's be
okay.
exact.
And then I thought there was more talk about it in the 80s. And then, of course, you go through the early 90s and that whole situation. It's kind of like, how are we even going to survive here? Yes, you're going to sell the team, and then, of course, the 98 season save it for us. But I mean, that's growing up in the 80s and 90s, and you kind of go through that. And now it's like, and then, okay, then we have the John Moores to the Morad thing, and that was disastrous. And so you kind of feel like we're just lucky here with Peter Seidler, and this is just a different type of billionaire. This is different, man. And now here we go again. So yeah, it does worry me, because nobody's saying anything. Nobody has any idea what's happening. All we know is they're not doing anything. And so last year we kind of knew it makes sense. They've gone over this. They don't want to go over the luxury tax again. They lost 10 spots in the draft because of that. They're paying a bunch of taxes on everything they're going over with. So you want to reset it, and you go, okay, there we go. At least with this team, we kind of know what the target is. And so we kind of had an idea. And we're talking last year, and it's like, okay, we know there's some guys out there, and they have some room to maneuver. And of course, they didn't do anything because they were waiting to acquire Arias, and that actually didn't affect them at all. Dylan Cease, they got Dylan Cease, and so they ended up in good shape. But we kind of knew what they had to work with. And now it's like, are you just trying to get under the luxury tax again? The penalties aren't big if you go over it by a little bit. So I don't think they're super focused on, okay, just in case, let's get 10 million under. I mean, I think they'd probably be fine going a little bit over. So it's just more like, well, how are you going to fill these holes if you're trying to cut back a little bit. And it's like you don't have a lot of trade chips, so it's kind of obvious Dylan Cease kind of has to be that guy if you're going to use that to fill the other holes, because Dylan Cease can bring you back a left fielder, another starting pitcher. So yeah, it is frustrating, and you kind of were waiting on Sasaki, and you kind of knew like maybe that's gonna determine a lot. Once Sasaki makes his decision, then we can move on with our offseason. So what are we, like a month later now? And I don't know, maybe a couple weeks, 2 weeks,
Several
2
weeks,
later.
yeah, at least two plus weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely wasn't right away. All right, Sasaki made his decision. Let's move on to plan B. It's just like, all right, what is happening here? We have some holes to fill. So like last year, it was kind of the same thing. It was like, we're waiting. There's some guys left. Who's gonna be your center fielder? And yeah, Preller knew what I think he knew what he was doing. I think for the most part, my goal last year going into that season, it was just like the end of the line for me, as far as like, you guys have had, Preller and his front office had so long to figure out Petco Park, and you're coming off the season, which you can't assemble a better lineup than they had in 23, and you couldn't have a worse situational hitting team in the history of baseball. I mean, and you go like, it's just hard to hit here. I get it, but if you can't win with that team, with that lineup, with all those superstars, like, let's do something totally different, or and I felt like, okay, he kind of had to go in a different direction, and it ended up like, I think it's one of the best offenses in baseball, right? And
Best
some of those,
by batting average.
yeah, and it was very efficient. They were clutch. They were situationally good hitters, and a lot of it was balancing those superstar kind of all or nothing guys, like Machado and Tatis. They're not complete all or nothing, but I mean, they're there to hit. They're going to try to hit homers. They do the damage, but you need guys like Profar, who's going to have a professional at bat. He's going to work the count, and then you bring in Arias, and he moved the needle a little bit, and then like Solano and Peralta kind of just fell to them. So it's not like strategically they were trying to get those guys. They just kind of were there, bring him in as minor league free agents. And then Jackson Merrill, maybe they knew he was going to be that good, but he turned out to be. So they had more than half of that, at least half the lineup, who were just guys who were totally different than the 23 season, where you had nobody except for Juan Soto who kind of had that plan, like, we got to move the line, guys. And I kind of feel like Machado and Tatis were not really, they're not the leaders in that movement. Like, let's move the line. I think they kind of know that's how it works, but that's not their job. And Juan Soto's the only guy doing it. And, as fans, we're like, dude, we don't need you to move the line. We need you to hit home runs. It's kind of like when Tony Gwynn would come up with the, let's say Bip Roberts singles to lead off the game. He's still second, and now Tony's up. All right, what's Tony going to do? You're going to roll over, ground ball to second, because he wants to move his guy to third. And you're like, what the hell are you doing, dude? You're going to get a single. Why would you do that? And I think Tony Gwynn's mindset is, this is the way you play the game. And if I can't rely on these guys behind me to do their job, we don't have a chance anyways. So I think I kind of saw Juan Soto in that way, and what the conflict probably was, where he's like, this is how you win. This is how you play winning baseball. And he got his home runs, but he was with a lineup of guys that played the exact opposite. And It wasn't until the end of that season where you kind of got like, you brought Profar back. Luis Camposano was kind of that guy too. He was kind of like just a little, he was with his little guys like Matthew Batten, and it was just like, how are we so good now? And it's just like, these guys are just trying to put the ball in play. And I think Machado and Tatis and those guys kind of follow that lead. And then last year, it was the whole season. It was so balanced with guys like Peralta and Solano were so freaking impressive. And you go, how they're old guys. And it's like, it's nice to have these old guys on the bench, but it was like, they were so good still. And it was more that professional at bat that kind of, I think, balanced the whole lineup out and made them so effective. So I'm kind of like waiting. Did you learn your lesson, front office? Was that kind of the lesson that you learned, and how are you going to repeat that?
In
Yeah, we
other
saw the
words,
horror-
yeah.
Go ahead, Craig.
Sorry, I was just going to say, in short, go sign Jose Iglesias Part 2. This time we
Exactly.
play you. This time we don't leave you in El Paso.
He's the guy. He's the guy I'm thinking of. For him and Peralta, I think just to have a couple more of those types of guys back, I think that would make.
Oh my
a
God,
difference.
Eric Grubner just salivating at the thought of the concert after the game,
Right?
doubling that
Oh.
revenue per night. Ooh.
Come on.
He's
Come
like
on.
a
Anyone
two-way
perfect.
player.
Exactly. If there's anyone perfect for the modern Padres, it's someone who can have a concert and a pinch hit at bat and do it all in the same weekend. So let's get to that. But I have a follow-up question, Jason, to something you said a couple minutes back, because you talked about, they're a little bit over the first luxury tax threshold, and it's not that painful to be there in terms of the penalties. But this is a bit more of a technical question. But what does it mean to the Padres vis-a-vis revenue sharing if they are over the tax or under the tax at the end of the year? In terms of I'm thinking about a franchise that's looking for money, in terms of the money they would get out of the trough from LA at all. What happens whether they're over or under?
I have to look that up, and I don't know. It's something I don't really think. It's something I don't really think about, and something we don't really track. So I don't.
Fair
what is it
enough,
like?
fair
Yeah, no, I don't want to like kind of guess out here, but no, I'm not sure. And I think when it comes to the payroll, it's like they're top 10 right now, still like maybe 9th or 8th, and I think it's closer to maybe bottom 50% or something like that. It's
Yeah.
they despite not doing anything this offseason, they're still way up there. And because they basically they were signing these guys to long-term deals, like if they were going to hold a $300 million payroll, and then when you go, psych, we're not going to do that anymore, and now you still got all these big contracts, so you still got top 10 payroll, but it's not balanced enough. But like I said, it's not something I thought about because you're still top 10 team. I think the revenue the teams that get the revenue are lower on the a lot lower than Padres are right now.
Would either of my other CBT experts like to step in?
Go ahead.
Well,
Chris.
when you get into revenue sharing, the thing is the Padres, because they've been filling their stadium up the past few years, they've actually been paying into revenue sharing. So
Right.
they've been making more than that average. The only way for them to lose money with their market size and the CBT would be on something called the market disqualification refund. And that's such an opaque little black box of discretionary spending that we don't know if it's $75,000 or if it's, 8 figures. We have no idea.
Okay.
The old market disqualification refund.
The market
This is like
disqualification
the
refund.
lockbox in Al Gore's
Yeah.
2000 debate.
Yeah.
It's just like, what's in the lockbox?
Oh.
We got to add that to our payroll page.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. This is why all these AI companies are winning, Chris, is because you come up with a phrase like that and then everyone panics and goes, I don't know what the market disqualification refund is.
Come up with it. Friggin' probably a Dick Monfort came up with it. Going like,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
can't get it.
Okay, but as you mentioned, all the time, and we shout you out every time I use it, but all the time on the show, Jason, I'm pulling up Roster Resource to keep track of these things. And, it just seems like the Padres, I know we talked about it last year too, but they're so uniquely saddled with long-term commitment combined with built-in raises within those contracts. The money went up for Tatis this year, money went up for Darvish this year, almost across the board, not completely, but almost across the board, the money went up for these players. And those commitments, 9-figure commitments are stretched through the decade. Raphie said something a 3 weeks ago when the whole ownership controversy began that I can't get out of my head, which was he asked the question, what do you think of those commitments now? Because if this was truly a tear down, new ownership, bad ownership circumstance, their first thing to do would be to get rid of every single star on the team, drop the payroll down below $100 million, make it easy to sell, clean up the books. I don't think, Jason, you can clean up the Padres books. I don't think it's really possible.
Yeah, have to be a really bad situation, because you'd have to Machado and Tatis and a couple of other guys who have no trades, you'd have to be convinced, like, yeah, these guys are telling me they don't want me. It's kind of like when they were trying to trade Jake Peavy. He was like, I don't want to go anywhere. I'm not going to accept this trade. And eventually it was just like, yeah, they want to trade you, man. Like, they don't want you here. And you eventually, as a player, you're just like, I get it, man. And especially, you're not trying to win, which is like, when it comes down to it, if you look at Roki Sasaki's decisions, it's like there's one team, I would say maybe 4 teams you could look at, but especially one team where you go, I'm never going to be in a situation where this team is going backwards. It's always moving forward. They're always trying to win. And right now there's like 25 teams in baseball, including the Padres. And you're just like, I don't know, at any time they could be like, we're cutting salary. We're going to take a step back. And as good as the Padres are, it's like, you're not moving forward right now. You could still say you have a good team, and they still do, but they're not moving forward. So as much fun as it would be, and I think as a Padre fan, because I think we're used to doing this, to being like, oh, we can't sign this player. Let's start coming up with trade scenarios, right? Like right now, we can go, hey, we could spend the next hour like, hey, what if the Padres were going to trade King, Cease, Arise,
Suarez.
Cronenworth, Suarez, and let's just say they're just going to tear it all down, and we could have fun and be like, oh wow, and look at all these young players we got, and just go back to all the trades. Look at the Jake Peavy trade. Look at the Adrian Gonzalez trade. They almost never work out for the team that's going backwards. It's like the reason that the Padres are where they are now, starting in 2020. In 2020, it was kind of that first year catalyst where it was like, it was a short season, but you realize, wow, we are so good in a 60 game season, but look at our pitch. We're out of pitching after 60 games. So what's the next step? We need some frontline starters. Brother trades for Musgrove, Snell, and Darvish, and it's like, I get it. Now we are a team that can win over 162 games, go to the playoffs, and have a chance to win the playoffs, which was not like when the Padres went to the playoffs in 05 and 06. They were out of pitching too. It was like Peavy and like Ismael Valdez, Chano Park. I think it was like they didn't have enough pitching to compete. And now over the last five seasons, it's like we got our at least three frontline starters that match up with mostly anybody in the playoffs. You got 3 or 4 guys in the bullpen that are lights out. You got superstars in the lineup, and it's like, okay, we go into the season knowing that we have a chance to go to the playoffs. And if we get to the playoffs, we can, if things go well, which they almost did this year. We have a chance to finally win a World Series, and that's a good feeling. Like I said, as fun as it is to just be like, hey, what can we get for this guy? What if we traded all these guys? What if they were going to trade Fernando Tatis? He could bring back a ton, but man, I don't want to go backwards like that anymore. I had that, that was fun for me back in the day. Now that we're here, it's like I don't want to go there anymore. If we trade Cease or Michael King, even, it's just like, you're not going to replace. Like, how are you going to replace those guys? You got 2 frontline starters, and then you're hoping, to piece through the season, which, you can do that with enough guys like Vasquez and Waldron having a good season. But yeah, it's just really difficult. And especially once you get to the playoffs, it's like we had a chance because we knew Darvish, King, Cease, Musgrove, like that's as good as anybody once we got to the postseason.
Yeah, we've talked about the worst moments of last year, and Craig really hit on really the one, which is Joe Musgrove having his arm go out one game too early, not able to give the Padres anything against the Dodgers.
I brought that up. I brought that exact point up to somebody, and I haven't done it again, because as soon as I said that, they're like, yeah, the Padres didn't score any runs after that, so it wouldn't have mattered. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. I guess we stopped scoring. It didn't, but yeah, I mean, that was, you think about, like, the Dodgers were out of pitchers and they were set up kind of not as good as they are this year, but they were setting up their season for like we're the team that knows we're going to be in the playoffs. So let's spread our guys out. We got Kershaw coming back. We got all these guys coming back. Let's, spread it out. And by the time they got to the end of the season, it was like, if their bullpen hadn't finally locked in, like, their bullpen was all over the place throughout the season. And then they all locked in the playoffs. And it was like perfect storm for them. But yeah, they were a mess too. And it's like, you just never know. Even this season, I think it would be fun to look at the Dodgers roster too and go like, this is all the bad stuff that can happen here. Like, every pitcher is a freaking like a red flag. Sasaki's going to give them 4 out of 6 years, right? Like, he's there's no way that guy's going to avoid Tommy John surgery. Like, I can say that about most pitchers. They got him for 6 years, but he's got to, they already wanted him to have Tommy John surgery in Japan, and he's held off on that, and it's been okay. But like, these pitchers all get hurt. It's just the Dodgers have such a big collection of pitchers now. It's like all their prospects coming up, they had like 5 or 6 good ones, and I think all but one is hurt. But by the time they come back, it's like, oh, we forgot they had all those guys, and now, oh, I forgot about that guy. We thought he was going to be really good. How he had Tommy John? Oh yeah, that was almost 2 years ago. When he last pitched, and so yeah, I mean, that depth's going to be, it's going to be tough to overcome. But I think that's what happened. You're the one team that just knows, like, nobody's going to catch us. We're just going to cruise to the postseason, and so we're going to set up our roster now for the postseason.
Jason, I'm curious your thoughts, as you have the best probably general feel of anyone in terms of all 30 teams, where they sit financially, where they sit in terms of their commitments, how you think the next 2 years play out. And then, I mean, obviously I don't expect you to have a crystal ball over there, but the idea that we could be headed toward prolonged labor strife at the end of this collective bargaining agreement.
Man, I don't know. It's, he said, I try not to think about the stuff that makes me sad. But yeah, I mean, people are starting to talk about it as like, yeah, for sure, it's going to be a big, we could be headed for a lockout. It could be a long lockout, which is not good for business, So I don't know. Whenever one of these teams, pays big money to one of these free agents, it's like, all right, good, here we go. But it does seem like, I don't know, about 10 teams at least have not done a thing this offseason, and it's like,
yeah,
what is going on? And you don't want,
we get
Padres
pissed
to go that
off.
far back, yeah.
We get pissed off at the Dodgers spending what they're doing, but there's 10 teams that could be competing with them for free agents and maybe beating them on the margins for, maybe not big guys, but a Michael Conforto. Maybe if the Reds were paying outfielders, they could compete with Conforto, but they don't. And there's 10 teams that don't do anything. They just sit back and collect money from the big market clubs or the small market clubs like the Padres, who are actually trying to win.
Yeah, and we're relying on these owners to agree on something that I think makes so much sense to everybody, just to have a floor and say, you teams need to spend at least this much, which is, I guess it's kind of that there's sort of that rule right now, which is why the Athletics are got up to 100 million. I think the Marlins might have to move up a bit too. I'm not sure on that, but it's not like a rule that is laid out like everybody understands it. I think most people would agree that's the case. If you got, why do you own a baseball team if you're not gonna even try? Like I think, and then again, we don't understand these billionaires that are whatever. Grandpa made a lot of money. I get it, and you want to show that like you're a great businessman and you can, I'm thinking like at their cocktail parties, they don't talk about like win-loss records as much as like, how much revenue did you make? I'm guessing because These guys don't try to win, and they're worth a lot of money. I don't, sell the team to somebody who cares, but yeah, I don't trust most of these guys that own a team. I mean, and the dudes who are super rich, if you want to, you want to start talking about some of those Saudi trillionaires or whatever, it's like the billionaires, these billionaires, they hate these super trillionaire guys more than they hate poor people. I really do think that they're like,
Are you sure?
Debatable.
yeah, it is debatable, but yeah, it's like they're not going to let them in there. They probably already hate that they let Steve Cohen in the group. I think it's not a small group. It's at least half of them, and even now you got Hal Steinbrenner acting like he's part of that group too.
Yeah,
and so it does make me unhappy, and I try not to think right now about things that make me unhappy. I'm going to focus one day at a time on important fun stuff in baseball. I'm really looking forward to spring training happening and Padres finally doing something. Because we think they are going to do something, right? Or else
the
it's
numbers. Like Craig pointed out in a Buster only tweet that had an amazing
thank
stat.
you. Good topic.
Lay it on us, Craig. It blew my mind.
Well, it's a perfect thing to talk to you about, Jason, because you probably know the exact number. But Buster said as of last Thursday or Friday that there were approximately 6 dozen, so around 80 major league veterans unsigned, and that in total across baseball there were fewer than 12 roster spots on 40-man rosters unclaimed, and that the Padres have 4. So even if it's 11 roster spots, they've got 4 of 11. And I kind of feel like this is inaction has turned into opportunity now. You've got chairs in the musical chairs and lots of people diving, maybe for $1 million deal.
Yeah, and they have they probably even have a few DFA candidates too. I mean, maybe 1 or 2. So if they really,
we don't have to name names to the poor guys.
Let me name them right now. So they already have 4 spots. But let's say they traded away Cease or King and they brought back 3 or 4. Or they probably wouldn't bring back more than 3 guys on a 40-man roster. So you got to be ready for something like that. But I think it is. I don't know. There's always guys on the waiver wire, for example, and it's like, okay, that guy's kind of interesting. The Tigers DFA'd Alex Fado, and you go, hey, Niebla can get a hold of that guy, and that guy can, you can turn him into something, and they don't seem to do a lot of that. They got Ron Marinaccio, who was good a couple years ago. They always seem to bring somebody back from overseas. So they got JB Wendelkin this year. So there are a few, but not as many as I would think. There's some teams that just they will just pick anybody up off the waiver wire because they're eventually trying to get them through waivers so they can keep them in AAA and not on the 40-man roster. So a lot of teams just keep reclaiming the same guy, like Jacob Amaya, who is a shortstop who he went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts against the Padres last year. So one game I remember, I was like, poor kid, man. I feel so bad. This guy he's not a major leaguer. He must be really good defensively because he's in the majors, and he's been DFA'd like 5 times this offseason, and he keeps getting claimed, and he's bounced around, and he's back with the White Sox for the second time. So you got a lot of GMs who are doing stuff like that, and I imagine like, okay, do Preller and his guys target certain players and like, man, if that guy ends up on the waiver wire, I'm picking him up because I really love that guy. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that was the case with Jeremiah Estrada. Like, do they really know? I mean, his stuff was good, but he was so bad the year before. But if you can turn somebody like Jeremiah Estrada around, I mean, you have to have pretty high confidence that you could bring in guys like that, and you're going to find a few guys that right now nobody's talking about. Or nobody would think like that guy was our best reliever this year. Or that guy's our closer now for the next 5 years. It's just there's not a lot of that roster movement that there's a lot, especially with Preller. I would say he seems like he likes to stick with his guys, and there's not as much as other teams. So I'm not sure what the reasoning is for holding these 4 spots open, but it's pretty clear they have openings. So I do think there's probably an offer out for David Peralta, same as Profar last year, where it was like, this is what we're going to give you. It's not a lot. So we love what you did for us. And if you go find a better offer, take it, but it's sitting here waiting for you, at least, for most of the offseason. So I think there's probably something like that, which Peralta was great last year. Not sure how good he's going to be at 37 or 38. I do like that quality of at bat that he had. So something like that. I think it's a lot easier for a lot of teams that get to 40 man to fill up their 40-man roster, because they have a few guys that they might have just claimed them off waivers. It's like, we don't care about this guy. We eventually just want to get him through waivers, and hopefully nobody claims him. And then we got an open 40-man spot, and we get to keep this guy. So.
Yeah, Ben Clemens wrote a couple of good articles about timing the free agent market, and how for players, the last 10 of the top 50 who signed tend to make almost no money. And it's not great for teams either, because those guys also tend to not produce. But then AJ Preller went out and did what he did last year. And Jurickson Profar wasn't a top 50 free agent, so he didn't make it into Ben's article. But do you think that was because Padres 2023 had such bad luck? Do you think Padres 2024 might have been like a equal and opposite reaction?
Yeah, and it bums me out too, because it seemed like everything went right, and now it's like you can't possibly have that many clutch hits again, ever. It seems like it got to that point last year too, where you go, they're not going to have another tie-breaking homer, or game tying homer in the 9th inning, because they've already had like 5 in the last month, and it just kept happening. And you go, this isn't just this thing. It does balance out, and that 23 season was starting to tilt in their direction. It never quite got there, and then 24 it was kind of a continuation. Yeah, so it's a great point. It's like, is that as good as it gets? It was also a great roster too, so it kind of bums me out. You go, you wish you could run it back, and but also without that luck, it's not going to be that kind of magical season. So I don't know. I don't know what to think.
I did want to ask one thing, which was that the Padres and AJ Preller continued their streak of avoiding arbitration with Michael King by
fly the banners. We did it, everybody. Mission accomplished.
And in the process, they signed a very interesting contract that I'm hoping that I have to admit, I don't exactly quite understand why it was beneficial. I know it's beneficial. I just, if you had a gun in my head and said, explain to me exactly why this helps the Padres, I think I would fumble a little bit. So my understanding of it is, it's a 1-year contract with a mutual option for 2026. And this year he gets $4 million, but there's a signing bonus for $3.75 million, but it's maybe not coming until later because it's a buyout. So I'm just like, can you help me understand how exactly this helps the Padres?
I think it helps them in terms of like I always explain, the luxury tax thing is helpful, because if we know a team doesn't want to go over the luxury tax, we have an idea of, okay, we have a better idea of how they're going to go about their offseason. Besides that, we have no idea how it affects the owners and the shareholders and all that. It's just, we have no idea. They have other businesses. So it's like when a team releases a player with $50 million left on his contract in 4 years, and it's spread out, on the books, Eric Hosmer's contract is on there until this year, but you know, an ownership team, the ownership might have been like, well, that's paid out, it's gone, we're not even worried about that, or they might be like, we're still paying this guy. You know, I think it really depends a lot, but because they did it that way, the only thing you could think of, like, I think that's going to help. Why else would you go? Why else would you make it so complicated and you had to get creative to do that? So I think if there's one thing that I thought about after that, it was maybe they're trying to kick the can down the road a little bit and say, like, we don't really know what's going on. Nobody's telling us, but maybe AJ Preller doesn't know either, and he's just like, we got this, you know, let's just push this back to next year, and maybe things will get better, and we don't have to trade Mike. We definitely don't have to trade Michael King. But I think that has to do with, you know, what the owners are paying him this year compared to next year. Although the AAV is it's not gonna change. So for luxury tax purposes, it doesn't change. But when the owners have to pay him, you know, this year or next year, like, maybe that helps him. That's what I was thinking. And it was like, if he can backload it to as far back as possible, maybe that's, you know, maybe he's thinking, you know, Preller's thinking the ownership situation will be kind of a little bit more stabilized at that point, and then maybe we have a chance to, you know, sign Michael King long term. That was the only thing that came to my mind, because it was like, yeah, what's the point of that? The mutual options are so dumb. It's like,
Yeah,
they never get picked up. It's
yeah.
like,
What's the dovetailing that has to happen for Michael King to want to make $15 and the Padres to want to pay him $15
yeah,
million?
they're not going to agree exactly. It's never going to agree. Yeah, we think you should
Yeah.
make 15. He's like, oh, I think I should make 15 too. So
Yeah,
it never happened. I want to say there's been like one mutual option.
know.
You know this?
I know.
Okay, it's been like one maybe in the last that I could ever remember. I don't remember who it was.
2013, Matt Belisle.
Lyle.
Wow, what a poll.
Yes.
wow.
Don't belie your confidence on this answer. It's true. It's Matt Belisle. He is the last guy to take a mutual option, according to something I read earlier this weekend.
And I think that was a year that I saw him and Todd Helton walking down the street, and I was walking over to Petco, and they walked past me, and Matt Belisle had a big cowboy hat on and cowboy boots walking to Starbucks. So I should have, if I would have known, I would have been like, what the hell, man? What is this mutual option there?
That dude had a hat budget, and the Rockies had a player budget.
Met
and
it.
they happened to
just
come
met
together.
it exactly. It's absolutely wild. Yeah, that's the way I look at it, Jason, is it's a credit card type situation. We're going to put that buyout on next year's number. Hosmer comes off next year's number. You know, certain other things are going to drop off next year's numbers. So I've got a little room to play with to throw it over there. Gladly pay you Tuesday for a starter today.
Yeah.
Is Ha-Sung Kim's buyout on our CBT hit this year or last year? Like retroactively?
It's on this year.
It's on this year. So that would be the same thing for Michael King. We're paying a little bit for, you know, the right to have the CBT money moved to next year as opposed to this year.
Yeah, you know, I guess you're right, because so 375. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, I
so
think
maybe
that's
maybe they did push that back. Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, so if that's the case, then there you go. There's still, at least according to our estimate, which is a lot of estimates. A lot to be determined based on how many guys are injured throughout the season. But you know, it's a few $1 million over. So if somebody's saying you have to go over, you have to go under. You have to bring it under. But we also need to add 2 bats and 2 pitchers. You could do the math, man. We could start doing these Dylan Cease trade scenarios right now. It's I don't think they want to, and I don't think they're a scary team without those top 3 guys. But
it could definitely be a choice. Like if they're planning on filling those last 4 roster spots with $1 million people, You're not going to pay a ton of tax in that.
Yeah.
It could be their strategy, although it's been reported that they want to be under the number. I want to ask you, looking at your amazing spreadsheet of future payroll obligations, if you might agree with Manny Machado, who seemed to kind of indicate that he also thought that the Padres 2024 and 2025 spending wasn't necessarily the plan for what the team had presented to him during his free agency. And like when you look at your big old spreadsheet with all this money down the road, like, do you see us standing here today being like a step on a journey, or do you think it's kind of like where we've ended up because we got put into the storm?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hate looking at those numbers. And I start thinking about how old they're going to be too. Like, oh, I'm staring at them right now. Yeah, Machado's number goes way up. Yeah, it's got
36-year-old Jay Cronenworth, baby.
Yeah, he said, like, these guys don't look at roster. Like, if I saw one of these a baseball player like out somewhere, I wouldn't be like, hey, let me show you my website. This is or have you heard of my website? I'm the guy who does roster resource. Like, these guys have no freaking idea. They out of everybody in the whole world, like, they might have the least interest in that kind of stuff. I think they're not focused on that at all. They're just like, I'm getting paid. And if you look at Machado's, how much money he's making over the last, half of that contract, it's just, you would think like, hey, man, you want to be on a winning team, but we need to let's do something. And it's not like you get money back, but can you restructure somehow and help us out? Like, I mean, he might do something like that, but I don't think these guys necessarily think that way. I think he got what he earned.
Yeah,
that's what he was worth. You paid me my respect there.
And the players' union has fought back when teams have tried to restructure. Lower
because
salaries.
that's going to help the future guys, and he'll tell you that straight up. And I think like I said, it's kind of like he got paid in respect. You respected what I did and what I bring to the table, and I don't need to do anything else to help you out. That's what I was owed. He's never going to spend any of that. I don't think he's going to spend any of the money he was already rich when he signed with the Padres. He had so much money. So it's like, how much money do you need? It's like, it's not dollars. It's like respect. You show me my respect, and that's, because you could look at that and go, don't you want to be on don't you want to free up some salary so you can go sign some guys? And I think you probably would, but that's not something that happens in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Jason, I just have one question for you left, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. And it's a question I actually asked you last year when you joined us, and I wanted to ask it you again because I think obviously
did I start ranting about Petco Park when you asked me that?
You did. This is the question. This is the question, because the question that I asked you last year was like, you obviously pay attention to all 30 teams, everything like that. And I asked you, what's different about the Padres than any of the 30 team or other 29 teams? And you talked about Petco Park and just how Petco Park makes everything different. And I just think this offseason, like, we're in such a silo as doing this podcast, and Craig obviously is on the radio but is obviously talking about the Padres and constantly. And so we're so in Padres mode. And I can't help but feel a little bit like this has been maybe one of the worst off seasons in franchise history. But also, I know I'm an emotional Padres fan, and I lack the perspective. And I guess I'm curious, like, covering all the other teams and seeing what all the other teams' transactions are like and what all the other teams' roster moves are like. Do you feel differently about the Padres offseason and think it's any more run of the mill, or do you share in the anguish that I think a lot of siloed people feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned past Padre teams, of course. I've been a fan since the early '80s, so I've been through a lot, and it really was a lot of years of just knowing that we're not going to do these these big things. We're not going to spend money. We got a guy who's going to be a free agent. We're gonna trade him before he becomes a free agent. And we've had like the one season in '98 where you go, we know we're going for it, and it was such an important year for the Padres. And you go, Kevin Brown, Caminetti, Finley, those guys are all going to leave, and we're not going to get anything for him. But throughout the history of the Padres, that's just not something that happens. You trade them before they become free agents. Until now. Now these last 5 years, it's like we're going for it every year. So we're losing Blake Snell, Josh Hader, Juan Soto without getting anything for them. And so what I try to do with, obviously I do focus on the Padres a lot, and I do think try not to lose that fandom because, and I think it was kind of, I don't want to say I lost it, but when I started doing this, and I've been doing this for 16, this is my 17th season doing it. When I started doing this, the Padres were competitive that, at least the second year, the 2010 year. And my kids were little, and I was still the guy sitting in front of the TV cussing and yelling and my son was 2-3 years old, and he loved it. He was getting into it. He knew all the players' names. And then if you think of the Padres after that, they've been so bad for so long. And it's like, did I just lose my passion because I work in baseball and I kind of just need a break from that kind of fandom? Or is it just because there's nothing to cheer about with this team? And so I think these last 5 years, it's like, it was still there. And so I can't separate it, but at the same time, I do try to look at them as just another one of the 30 teams. When I can go to the Colorado Rockies and go, let's take a look at this roster, and let's go through all the things that need to happen for this to be good. If I was a Rockies fan, I can get excited and say, a lot of good stuff has to happen, but the chances are it's not. But it could happen, and you can, the flip side, you look at the Dodgers and you go, okay, what are all the bad things that can happen? And you can see it. I think we forget as fans, but the Dodgers were kind of a mess last year, and I actually did call this. I did call it because I said the Dodgers finally have some adversity, like real adversity to overcome. That's going to get them. That's going to get them the World Series, because it seems like they were almost trying to manufacture adversity in the previous offseason where they didn't do anything, and they're like, we got Jason Hayward, yay! It's like, are you just, because the Padres had knocked them out of that first round, and they're like, maybe we shouldn't win 105 games and just cruise to the playoffs, so we're not going to do a lot in the offseason. And then it was like, we still cruised to the offseason. And so this year they had some adversity. But anyways, that's, opposite ends of the spectrum with, what has to go right for the Rockies, what has to go wrong for the Dodgers. And that's kind of the perspective I try to have with the Padres too. And I take a step back and you go, that's still pretty good team. And I can see, hey, let's get Jose Iglesias. Let's bring David Peralta back and find some of those Jeremiah Estrada types, and let's go for it again. And I'd be happy. So I understand, ownership has seemed to be a little clueless about marketing. Look at all this momentum you have. Look at how many people fill the stadium. This is crazy.
Yeah,
Tuesday night against the freaking Rockies, and it's sold out.
Yep.
And so to not say anything and just to go into FanFest, and it's like, yeah, we haven't done anything. And yeah, we're still good. Great. It's like, come on, man. Somebody, I get reminded of this throughout the year too. Like, reminding me of when the Pirates designated Rowdy Tellez for assignment, and there was a huge news story, like he was only 4 at-bats away from whatever. Yep. And it's like,
right. Incentive is
bonus.
And
it's like, did you look at his numbers? And he was so, like, he actually had gotten hot for a while, but he was in a spot where you should have DFA'd him, or you should have released him or whatever, but you waited till he was like really close, and there's like nobody communicating this. This is going to look bad. And, like, you go to FanFest and everybody's excited. probably, but and everybody that's mad online, maybe they don't, maybe you don't see as much as that, but it seems like it's a lot of fan bases, but it also seems like that stuff can be avoided, and it's not like I don't know I don't know what the Padres could have done up to this point, like if they're just completely just like I don't know if Preller has something in mind, and maybe the plan is just wait a couple guys out, and because we don't have money to spend. Maybe he has a plan. It worked out last year, but I don't think he was waiting around for Donovan Solano to sign. I don't think he was waiting around for David Peralta to get released by the Cubs for him to sign a minor league deal, and that was not part of his plan. It just kind of happened, and it really. It all worked out. It all worked out great, and it was like I hope there's a lesson learned from that balance of that roster, and how badly 2023 was. As good as that roster was, and it's like you have like maybe the best 22-man roster of all time, but you have no the seventh and eighth inning. It's like you're the worst team of all time in the seventh and eighth. If you haven't blown them out in the fourth inning, and it's like, okay, there's something to learn from each of those seasons. And so, you kind of just waiting now. You go, I kind of trust Preller. It seems like he knows what he's doing. But as a fan, like, come on, think about the fans. I really do. They don't think about, and I get it. Like they're trying to win, on the field. All that matters is winning and losing. So those guys on the field aren't thinking about certain things, but the Padres ownership, marketing has to be like, come on, we got it. Let's do something to get the fans excited. And I get it. They like last year was amazing. So I kind of think they go into it and like, what has changed? Why are you so mad at us now? Can you remember just the year that we just had? Yeah. Everybody's like, yeah, everybody, we lost Profar, we lost Kim, we lost all these guys.
But I think you're onto something from like a marketing or like a PR standpoint. Yeah. Like the front office and the very tippy top of the club hasn't done a very good job. Like Eric Kutsenda could have put on a flight jacket and stood on that Fan Fest stage and recited the speech from Independence Day. Like he could have done that. That would have been a choice. He chose not to.
Yeah, I mean, he's even in. I don't think he's even in charge anymore. But like, I don't think we heard a word from him the whole time.
It's in his last few weeks, depending on the owners' meeting and John Seidler's coronation.
Yeah, so maybe he doesn't. Yeah, so he's like, I'm not going to go say anything. I'm out of here anyways. Don't throw me out there.
It's the coward's way out.
Yeah, it sucks because you want to be mad at somebody and you say like, we have such a good thing here, and it's just kind of. I don't want to be all dramatic and say it's we're going to lose it, but I remember 7 years ago, it was not like this, and it was not as much fun to be a Padres fan. If you want to go to a Padre game on a Tuesday night against the Rockies, there's going to be plenty of seats for you, but that doesn't happen anymore. But definitely don't want to go backwards. You want to keep filling the seats, and I don't know, Mr. OMG. I think would be a guy that could bring some seats, some fans in the seats. For you don't want to spend a lot, or maybe he's asking for a lot of money. Who knows? Hey, I like David Peralta. I like. Hey, there's probably there's a lot of fun guys out there, and I think maybe they don't care if guys are fun, but it does. This is a business. It's an entertainment business. Like these fans are coming out to be entertained. And yeah.
Isn't Sander Bogarts into horses? Maybe he can go out there and do some jumps.
That sounds good to me. Yeah.
I might have just made that up.
I always say
one of them's into horses.
The thing I want as a Padres fan and as a Mexican with ties to Tijuana is I want like 5 guys on this team that are from Tijuana and
Terso, baby.
So we got Terso, and then there was the guys that actually fit pretty well with this team, and there were trade targets for me, and that's Alejandro Kirk. I was like, oh, you got to go to Kirk.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love that.
It was Jonathan Aranda from the Rays.
We have people in our Discord trying to get him.
There you go, and then Javier Assad as well. And hey, maybe if Cease goes to the Cubs, that's the guy. He's not replacing Cease, but he's He's a major league pitcher. He's pretty good. And he's from Tijuana.
Understatement of the century.
You got the, Jeremiah Estrada doesn't have to be the one with, who represents the mariachis. I don't think Jeremiah Estrada even speaks Spanish, man, but represents. He's Mexican. My Spanish is bad too. But to have a guy who's actually from there, I don't know. That was my fun off-season plan.
I've been rooting for Terso a long time for that exact reason, man. Like, it's like one big old city that has a border running through it. The Padres could do a lot more work there, and there's talented guys there.
Yeah, he was a huge guy, like 16 years old. I remember seeing him, and they're like, this guy's gonna be good. He's 16, and he was already like 6'4". And they're like, he's eventually gonna be too big to play center field. But it was so long ago. Man,
it's a decade now.
Yeah, just to go back to these trades really quick again, and how a lot of them don't work out. But it's like, I was thinking about this, and it's like, Mackenzie Gore. When did we draft that guy? Like 2017, and he's barely to the point where it's like, I think he finally gets it now, and he's 3 years left until he's a free agent, and it's like, yeah, I get it that. You need to draft and develop and have these guys. And the reason big reason we're always in the spot every year is we don't have these guys ready to step up. You're hoping that Mackenzie Gore was going to be the next Kershaw or Bumgarner, one of those lefty high schoolers that was drafted in the top 10 picks, and it was like, it rarely happens these days. You got to wait forever. It's like you're waiting out injuries and trying to figure it out, and it's like, I'd rather just trade all these guys away. Whoever was drafted that 2024 draft, man, if AJ really wants to get some stuff done, if you were drafted last year, all these guys, and a lot of these guys have really cool names too, so I hate to see them go. But
Fountain, baby.
Cale Fountain, Cash Mayfield. Was it like Boston Bateman? There was like 5 or 6.
Cobb Hightower has
Kavera's Tears. Come on, Kavera's Tears. Yeah. What's better than that?
Man, I'll
be shedding tears if we ever let him go.
Somebody likes those cool names. Like when I was looking at those names, and I was like, somebody's like me. They're like, wouldn't it be cool if we had that guy? I could totally see that guy as a big leaguer. His name is Cash Mayfield. Like, you can already see it. But man, these guys are so far away. It's like we're trying to win now, and I like being on that side of it for once as a Padres fan.
Everyone needs to support Fangraphs. If you're using the site all the time, drop them a few bucks. Take care of them. Support Jason RR Martinez. Roster Resource continues to be our key resource every time we're trying to sort everything out. Jason, always appreciate your time, man. We got to get you back on during the summer for more Padres hot takes. The very last thing before I let you go, the photo mural behind you.
Yeah.
I've been trying to decipher it over your shoulder because the big one behind you is Fernando. So first I was going to ask, are you a spy? And I was wondering if every single one of those tiny pictures were all Dodgers as well. But I don't think that's the case. But now I'd like to know who they are.
I'm a fan of baseball history. And then, of course, like, I'm Mexican, so Fernando was a big deal to me, even though he was on Dodgers. And then he was
a great Padre, Jason. We don't need to talk about anything else.
Okay. And then all the rest are legends. I mean, and then my top row is like, so you got Ted Williams, half Mexican like me. I'm half Mexican from San Diego, same as him. Fernando, Clemente, Bob Gibson. There's Tony, Jackie, Satchel Paige, Willie Mays, Ozzie Smith, and I have Koufax. That's the top row, and then everything else was just kind of, a lot of mostly 80s and 90s guys.
Nice.
And of course, I grew up in the 80s, so Kent Tekulve and Dan Quisenberry are like, obviously any weird funky pitcher is on there.
Yeah. Love it. Okay, good. I was thinking this was going to be like a scene from The Shining where we were going to zoom in and it's a ballroom and we're all in there, but it's all Dodgers too. But maybe that was just a flight of fancy. All right, man. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it on behalf of the boys and all of the folks who listen to the Hot Tub. Thanks for taking time with us tonight.
Thanks for having me on. I had a lot of fun.
All right, we're back next week with more frivolity. For Chris and Raphie, I'm Craig. Thanks for supporting this show. Patreon.com/Padres Hot Tub. Join us, become a member. And until then, go Padres.